It is exciting to be with you today. We are thrilled to be back at the Maddie Rhodes Center. I thank my good friend, John Fierro, who does an exceptional job in this community in the Northeast and the West Side, truly throughout our city, making sure that we are working with, we are inspiring, and we're involved in the lives of our young people in Kansas City. So thank you, John, for a lifetime of service. We are here for a simple purpose. And I am pleased today to announce a $2 million grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to continue to combat violence in our community. A portion of this grant will fund a 3-year contract with the Maddie Rhodes Center to assemble a Hispanic and Latino response team and community health workers to meet with Latino survivors following a violent event and to conduct street outreach in our Latino neighborhoods. We recognize that for years in Kansas City we have done street outreach, but we have not done it fairly and equitably in every part of our city. We have not broken down language barriers. Sometimes we haven't broken down even broader neighborhood barriers. We thank Maddie Rhodes for cooperating with us in our ability to do that. We recognize in Kansas City too many of our communities are impacted by gun violence, and we know that we need to reach out to our youth increasingly at a younger age. 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds who are experiencing trauma in our community. So I thank you all for being part of that important discussion with us. We also recognize that cooperation is key, and that's why you see everyone here today. Deputy Chief of Police Luis Ortiz, who's been working with violent crimes for years, but who's making a tremendous impact in our community, making sure that we see that cooperation. My brother Rashid from Aim for Peace, who has done a wonderful job in making sure that we keep doing the work to get out to communities, to intervene, to get out to people, and ensure that we all believe that we can stop gun violence. And then two of the most impressive and important women in this city. Our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Jennifer Collier, who for more than 2 decades has been involved in, has been inspiring, and has been doing the hard work in KCPS. We are blessed, we are grateful, we are thankful to have her as our permanent superintendent of schools. And we thank you for continuing to do this valuable work. And Dr. Marvia Jones, you know, about a year ago, I don't even remember exactly, I had a call with Dr. Jones and I said, you should think about being health director. And she said, well, you know what, it seems kind of challenging right now. And I'm like, it won't be that hard. And it has been something. But she is committed each and every day to addressing all of the issues that are impacting population health in our community. And she recognized and has studied for an entire career the impact of gun violence and how we can help prevent it. All the folks here will come up and speak. I'll come up and answer some questions. But I want to say, importantly, that we are going to make sure that when we talk about violence prevention, it isn't in one neighborhood, it isn't in one community, that we will touch each one. And I will say, and I'll actually apologize to John and to so many others, because we have not always made the same commitment with the Latino community that we have with others. We have been behind in too many situations. We haven't broken down barriers that we needed to. I hope today is a clean break from that. So thank you, John, for helping us with that opportunity, and I turn it over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Lucas. You know, the rare times that I get to follow the mayor, it has really been about him announcing resources for the Hispanic population of Kansas City. And those of you that don't know, our mayor sí habla español. Gracias, Mayor, por su apoyo y tu ayuda para nuestra comunidad. I greatly appreciate him for his leadership for everyone in Kansas City. And I think I've seen this more than twice where he is very focused on leveraging resources for the entire community, and in particular the Hispanic community. So we greatly appreciate that, Mayor. Thank you to Dr. Marvia Jones for entrusting the Maddie Rhodes Center in the implementation of this new citywide grant. Our unique services model, impacts more than 20,000 individuals a year and is aligned with improving the personal health of Kansas City's Hispanic population. As a nationally accredited organization, our team of professionals, many of them over here, work to integrate our services focused on education, healthcare, economic development, environmental placemaking, and community betterment. Now in our second century of community services, Maddie Rhodes Center is prepared to partner with Aim for Peace and utilize the Department of Justice funds. We will hire 3 bilingual English and Spanish street outreach workers to de-escalate violence throughout our city. We will partner with neighborhood associations, school systems, churches, and peer organizations to provide social services to Hispanic families impacted by violence, and we'll work with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, the media, civic leaders, and elected officials to integrate our efforts to reduce violence in Kansas City. Finally, this partnership builds upon the work of our team at Maddie Rhodes Center. First of all, I'd like to share with you, more than a decade ago, my good friend Joe Arce, who's the publisher of Kansas Hispanic newspaper, came to me following the tragic murder of his teenage nephew, and really spoke to the importance of bringing attention to those Hispanic families that were impacted by homicides in our city. And it was from there we began to provide counseling services and social emotional support to our families. Joe, thank you for having the foresight to bring us really where we are today. And to many of our social workers, many of them over off to the my right, who are in the public schools, the charter schools, the parochial schools, providing very important social emotional support to our children in times of need where they are at, as well as to the families. And I also want to bring attention to the advocacy efforts of our board of directors, our volunteers who work tirelessly to bring resources to Kansas City's Hispanic population. And with that, I would just say again, thank you, Mayor Lucas, Dr. Jones, for your trust in us, and we will not let you down.
Thank you. I'm going to get this out of the way for you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to mark this occasion, an evolution, if you will, in Kansas City in terms of violence prevention. We've been having this effort underway, the Cure Violence Model, for 15 years. 2008 marked the beginning of this particular mission. And the model itself talks about credible messengers, having credible messengers in the community to be able to do this work, people that identify with the community, people that the community trusts. And so when we're thinking about a partner, Maddie Rhodes obviously came to the forefront in terms of somebody who was a credible messenger in the Latino community. And so they're a natural partner in this work to be able to do conflict mediation and case management of high-risk individuals in the community to be able to reduce violence in our community. Currently, we have the other part of this program underway. We've canvassed 215 hours already in this particular year. And we have 27 participants that we've enrolled in this program. Well, you know Maddie Rhodes is gonna double that though, right? They're gonna match that and some. And so we just are trying to make sure that we expand this work. This should be just the start of the work in the Latino community, because you need way more workers than 3 workers, right? So we need way more workers in this area to be able to do this work. And one of the reasons we began to contemplate that we need to focus on the Hispanic, we're looking at the numbers of homicides and shootings in the Hispanic community, and they're high. And we want to reduce those numbers. Many times we went to the hospital bed and we had a barrier because we didn't speak Spanish. I didn't go to that class like the mayor did. I skipped that class of Spanish. And so at a homicide scene, you know, we weren't able to communicate. But now we're able to communicate with those families because Maddie Rhodes is on the field and doing this work. So we should applaud our city, our health director for taking on this initiative. And this only marks a part of what we're going to be doing in terms of violence prevention. You've heard about a lot of the initiatives that's underway. Dr. Jones is professionalizing the service and encouraging us to get out and do more. And I'm sure she'll expand on more of our comprehensive strategy to do this work. We just thank Maddie Rhodes for being a willing partner for us here today with Aim for Peace and moving the work forward to stop violence. Thank you.
Can we get your name, sir?
Rashid Junaid.
You with?
I'm with Aim for Peace, and that is a part of our Kansas City, Missouri Health Department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid, and thank you all for this opportunity to come before you today. One of the things I often get asked as the health director and one who has specialized in violence prevention for some time is, what does violence prevention have to do with public health? What does public health have to do with violence prevention? And I want to share with you sort of the key idea of public health is that we understand risk factors, and then we form interventions that specifically address those risk factors. So, for instance, we can predict which communities, which neighborhoods, which areas, which parts of our city are more likely to experience violence, which populations are more at risk. We know that people who have financial distress inside their home. We know that areas where there is not the best academic achievement. We know that neighborhood historical disinvestment is a risk factor. And we know that exposure or previous exposure to violence is a risk factor. And so when Rashid talks about the things that Aim for Peace is already doing and how this partnership will benefit us with Maddie Rhodes, it makes sense that we are addressing key risk factors. We know that some people have already been exposed. We know that some people, even more people, are at greater risk. And so we're happy for city leadership, the mayor and his office, who have been working fervently to not only advocate for policies that make a difference and decrease some of the stress and strain on some of our neighborhoods, but also that financial support, right? We know that money, to have things work well, money makes the world go round. And so we are really happy for the expansion and the support that our city leadership has put into place. One of the things that we will be doing to address some of those risk factors I mentioned to you and more include increasing the number of mentors, maybe those formal mentors as well as informal mentors in our city. Looking at how we clean our neighborhoods and how they look and feel. You've heard a lot of discussion already about trash and pickups and that sort of thing. These things are not separate. They are all integrated, and they all make a difference into how at risk our communities are, not just for things like violence, but for things like low graduation rates and opportunities for home ownership. And so I want you all to see these as integrated, connected issues, and they're not singular, which means that no single agency, no single department, as great as my health department team is, we aren't going to be able to do it alone. And so it is very important that we have partners like Maddie Rhodes and others, and we're so grateful for the city's support of these projects and programs. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Jennifer Collier and very proud to be here as the new superintendent for Kansas City Public Schools. Today is a great day, not only for Maddie Rhodes and Aim for Peace, but also for Kansas City Public Schools and our city. And when we think about this amazing culturally responsive approach to addressing violence and trauma that many of our students and families are dealing with, this is everything for KCPS. In Kansas City Public Schools, just a little bit about our demographics. We serve 90% students of color in KCPS, and 27% of that population are Hispanic students, and that is our fastest growing demographic at KCPS. We also serve 24% of our students speak English as a second language. And so to know that we're going to have these additional resources and supports to help our families is amazing. We often say in Kansas City Public Schools that we cannot do this work alone. We rely on partnerships with our community to help us serve the whole needs of our children. We look to partner with agencies and partners who have missions and visions that align with ours. And over the years, Maddie Rhodes has been an organization that has wholeheartedly stood alongside KCPS and supported us in many ways. They provide mental health resources, staff for our buildings, mentors in our buildings, bilingual services, tutoring to our children, extracurricular activities, which is very important for our children to have. And so they have been a tremendous support to KCPS over the years. And so what this partnership signals for us is that there will be even broadened and deeper support that we can provide to our families. When I think of the needs of students, we know that learning is very important, academics are very important, but according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can't really get to the growth and self-realization that we all want to achieve as adults until we first have taken care of what's considered those needs, those physiological needs, those safety needs, mental and physical safety. And so through this work that will be moving forward, we'll be better positioned to support our children and our families for success in this community. So I want to commend all those who have been a part of these efforts, and we're looking forward to this continued partnership.
Thank you so much,
Good morning. The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is excited to be here, and we're thrilled that we're partnering with Aim for Peace, Maddie Rhodes, Mr. Mayor, Dr. Jones, Dr. Collier. Thank you very much for being here, Rashid. Thank you very much. Anytime the community members benefit from such a program like this, it's a win-win for the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and for everybody. We know that in the past, or we just talked about the violence and how that is affecting the Northeast area of Kansas City, specifically Hispanics. In 2022, we had 17 homicides in this area. That's not even counting the 69 non-fatal shootings that we had. And something else that we haven't talked about is the mental health and substance abuse. We had 905 emotionally disturbed incidents that people were in crisis. And this is a great opportunity for us in the Hispanic community, for everybody to take notice of this. This is happening and we had to act. In the past, we always talked about how the police department is responsible for the crime that is happening here. But we also know that it takes a whole community to do better and to ensure that this is not happening anymore. Maddie Rhodes, Rashid, Aim for Peace, these are programs that we need. A few months ago, Rashid and I were in the Kansas City 360 meeting, and we talked about conflict resolution and how the lack of those skills is driving some of the violence that we see. Sure enough, I went back to watch all the videos of all the homicides and shootings that we had, and I realized, yes, conflict resolution is a problem. It used to be in the past that people will fight it out, or just argue. Now, people just pull a gun, and that's sad to see that in our community we don't have those skills. Maddie Rhodes, Aim for Peace, is going to be providing those skills for the people that are still struggling in this area. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your support, and I hope that this is a new beginning from this point on, and that we will do better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll do questions next. I do want to just commend Deputy Chief Ortiz, Chief Stacy Graves. They have been committed to these efforts since the chief came into her position, I believe, in mid-December. You have seen consistent cooperation and support for collaborative programs like this one, so we thank you, Deputy Chief. I will also note that these grants don't come by accident, and much of the outreach that has been done in recent years, and I commend the police department for that as well. Then Acting Chief Joe Mabin visited with the President of the United States and the Attorney General, I think roughly last summer, to discuss issues like this one. This relationship that we've been able to build does very strong work for us being able to receive grants like this one. I know the Health Department and Aim for Peace also do extensive work in making sure that we put our best foot forward for these types of opportunities. Are there any questions for any of you? Go ahead.
How important are days like today when you address a problem that continues to plague this city? We talk about all the good things that are happening in Kansas City. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. How important are these days in moving that forward?
I think Deputy Chief Ortiz just noted it, which is that we are working hard to make sure that we can improve each and every day. It is vital that we don't look past what our challenges are. I think if there were critiques that some of us might have had in the past, is that sometimes we just talk about the good things happening in Kansas City and don't balance all of the other things that are happening along the way. So days like this are important, but I think the most important part is that this is a recognition that we are investing in our young people, and there's nothing more important for us to do. We spend a lot of time debating literally everything else. I'm often in those debates, so I take my credit or blame for it. But this is the most important thing we can do. Making sure that children who are in Dr. Collier's schools have resources, know about conflict resolution opportunities, have mentorship opportunities like those from Maddie Rhodes. That is why we're here today, and that's why we're trying to do the work, because I think every person up here believes that the status quo of violent crime in Kansas City doesn't have to remain the way it has been. For those of us who grew up here, we have known about challenges on our streets and in some neighborhoods for generations. I believe that we can change that, and I think that's what everybody is here for today. Yes, ma'am.
How much of this $2 million grant is going toward this program specifically?
And I think Dr. Jones would be the administrator of the program grant. Do we know that yet? Go ahead. You said.
$600,000 of that grant are going to Maddie Rhodes.
Is that enough money or are you going to be looking for additional funding? Because you start this program, but once the money runs out, you may not have this program. So are you going to be continuously looking for additional funding?
Absolutely. What you're describing is a concern around sustainability, and that's something we are always considering at the health department. We are always seeking additional funding and also being creative about how we use the funding that we are allotted. We are really grateful. I mentioned earlier about city leadership and their support of things like funding that would be provided through the 3% sales tax for marijuana, as well as the funding that we received, $6 million per year for violence prevention for 5 years. So all of these funding opportunities will be leveraged to continue to support all areas of our neighborhood, of our community.
Is there going to be a way for you to sort of track the progress of the grant in terms of like the work you're doing with actual violence reduction?
I'll have the health director come back and answer that specific point too, because she does the tracking. I will say this, and I'll just reiterate, the marijuana sales tax, and we thank our voters tremendously for that. Part of the goal was that we could find permanent funding for these hard-to-fund priorities. Every year we say we believe in violence prevention and are looking for change, basically, to try to address it. This makes a permanent source of funds, one that, frankly, because I think people are buying a lot of marijuana, is one that's fairly well funded and one that will continue to grow here in Kansas City and throughout our community. Same thing with our Violence Prevention Fund. That was an effort by City Council and the Mayor's office to ensure that we had permanent funds of $6 million per year that could go directly to violence prevention. So these very sorts of things are going to be funded in a way that they haven't before. I know Rashid, since I've been on City Council back in 2015, has been talking to us about we need more resources. And some years on several $100,000 were doing all they could to reach as many people as they could in Kansas City. This is a commitment by us to make sure that we are doing all of the steps necessary. As to the tracking and the compliance, I'll have Dr. Jones speak to that.
Thank you. With any federal grant, there are extensive evaluation components. We will be tracking things like, obviously, number of people who are reached and mentored, but also tracking the number of people who decide to change their path. So we look at their risk factors at the beginning of the program when they first kind of start engaging with Maddie Rhodes and others with Aim for Peace, and then determine we assess their risk factors, and then the goal is always to move them to the point where their risk factors change, so they are no longer exposing themselves to certain high-risk behaviors, and we can see a difference in their outcomes.
Other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.